We need it. Oxygen. It's why we breathe.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Small Business Stories. Every week we bring to you all kinds of amazing guests. They have small businesses and they help small businesses. Every single one of them has well, we'll just call it for what it is, a fountain of knowledge. And you're just not going to find this out there. You're going to have to keep listening to our podcast to get all of the bits you need. Today, we've got Mickie Kennedy from eReleases, and he calls himself the PR Ninja, which I really love. So we've never had a ninja on the show before. Hi, Mickie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, glad to be here. And if anybody looked at me, you would say this is not the physique of a ninja, but I do know quite a bit about PR and press releases specifically.
Well, this is just it for the folks that don't have the benefit of the visual experience, because we do have a lot of folks listening to us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and all kinds of other channels. Let's give them a bit of a visual. So, what are we looking at? You brought it up, Mickie, and I'm, as you know, dazzled by your glasses. And so, what
Sure.
do you want to share?
So I wear rainbow glasses. I'm always been a little overweight, though I do try to stay active. And I am in my 50s, so I am not what you think of either athlete or ninja or anything like that. But I do have a lot of fun with it and a great sense of humor.
Well, that's what it takes, right? And it's good to be a stealth ninja, right? There's so many companies operating in stealth mode. So we're going to
Right.
get into that. Tell folks what you are really good at, Mickie.
Okay, so my background education-wise is actually poetry. I finished a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing, uh, specializing in poetry. And my game plan was not to go in business, but to just wait tables and write poetry. And I'd always done that through college and graduate school. And when I did it full time the summer after graduating with my MFA, I realized that there's a difference between, two or three shifts a week and five or six shifts a week. And I just felt physically exhausted. My back hurt, my ankles hurt. Again, that ninja body at standing on concrete for 10, 12-hour shifts. I just realized I needed to pivot quickly. So I got hired at a telecom research startup as employee number three. And because I had writing in my background, one of the many hats they wanted me to wear was doing PR for them, specifically writing out press releases and faxing them. And unfortunately, this is the days of fax. This was almost pre-internet. There was dial-up at the office, and people shared a single dial-up connection, and it wasn't really that fast at the time. And so I wrote these press releases based on what the telecom attorney who owned the place directed, and programmed 130 numbers in a fax machine that only held 100. So I would program 100 numbers, send, that would take all day, hit delete of those numbers and have to put 30 in. And I was just like, is there any chance we could get a second fax machine and just keep it loaded with 100 numbers here and 30 numbers here? And he goes, that fax machine is state of the art. It's $5,000. So at
Oh,
that
no.
point, I decided I'm just going to have to waste a couple of days doing this. And not much happened. And the owner said, oh, yeah, press releases don't really do anything. I'm like, well, why am I wasting like almost 2 days sending out a release monthly, it seemed. And I took it as a challenge. I went, poured over materials about how to write a press release at the library. Again, not a lot of information online yet. And
On microfiche, no less,
right,
right?
yeah, right. And
I'm your age. I get it.
right. And so I ended up looking at just the articles themselves, like where we wanted to be, newspapers and a lot of telecom trade publications. And I realized that even if it's a very short article, journalists like to follow a story arc. And we were publishing mostly data tables and not a lot of story. And so we had just published Caribbean telecom traffic data and sent out a press release for that, and nothing happened. But I looked at the data, and there was an outlier. Like one country had way more traffic than all the others, and I'd never heard of it before. I can't even recall it at the moment. But when I asked why that was, they said, "Oh, all 1-900 numbers are routed through this country. They go in there and back out to the United States, and it's just sort of like a billing thing." And I was just like, "Whoa, that's interesting." And so I got a little more research and then put together a press release talking about our data, but specifically how this one country has way more traffic than all the others, and talking about 1-900 numbers. And for I know a lot of people listening are like, "What's a 1-900 number?" Years ago, and this was in the 1990s, you could call a 1-900 number and people would market it. You could get like, recorded horoscopes for 75 cents a minute, or speak to a live psychic for $5 a minute, or get pet advice or love advice, and, everything in between. And there were certainly adult natured 1-900 numbers as well. And so these were just billed to your landline. And so, people would just do it, and it would get billed to their landline based on the per minute charge. And so I sent that press release out, and we got picked up by The Economist, Financial Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and three telecom trade publications, as well as I think it was a monthly Red Herring magazine, which was a technology magazine. And so that was very different than what you had been experiencing. And so I just felt like, hey, I'm going to start looking at these press releases as opportunities to tell an interesting story, and also have the data in there. And we continued to get picked up. We continued to get sales. We started getting sales from investment firms, hedge funds, people that we never considered customers before this. Basically, our customers before were other phone companies that were interested in our data. And it really opened us up to a much bigger market. And we got a really huge reputation in that space. And as I was faxing, I started getting phone calls from journalists saying, "Hey, could you just email me this press release?" And I was like, "Whoa, yes, that's so much easier than programming a fax machine." I was like, if I could get 30 of these people to do that, I could keep all the numbers in the fax machine. And so I noticed that trend. I mentioned it to my boss, and he goes, "Oh, someone could start a press release business just emailing press releases." And that was the impetus for eReleases. I'd still spent another year at that company, um, working for them. But in the evenings, I would do research. I would get email addresses of journalists. I would reach out to them, mostly on bulletin boards, which were real popular at the time. And there was a lot of bulletin boards where journalists hung out. And it was just a fun, exciting time where people were building communities everywhere. And so I launched in October of 1998 with about 10,000 journalists in my database, all different subjects and topics that they wrote on. And I that's how I got started, and that's how I found customers, mostly the bulletin boards. There was a big bulletin board called Link Exchange that was real popular that Microsoft bought, and it was just off to the races. And I still had my day job, so I was doing the press release thing in the evenings and early mornings. And then after a while, I felt like it made sense to just do this as my job, and I did that and got started. The big difference is I now have employees, and over the years, I've pivoted where I'm no longer sending press releases via email, but we have a partnership with PR Newswire, which is the oldest and largest newswire of press releases, where our releases go out at a fraction of the cost. PR Newswire charges over $1,700 to go out nationally for a 600-word press release. And through us, it's about a third of the price, maybe even closer to a quarter, especially if you take advantage of a new customer special. And we do over 10,000 releases a year. We
Wow.
predominantly work with small businesses, which their sales team isn't interested in working with, because they're chasing people spending $20,000, $40,000 minimum a year. And my clients are maybe spending $1,500 a year. So it's a different market for them, and they've been very supportive of small businesses and entrepreneurs and authors and startups. And so it's just been a very fortunate relationship. And if a big company comes through, I just send them directly to a contact I have at the Newswire. So it's been a wonderful experience and has opened up the Newswire, which basically before that only large companies or well-funded companies could afford, to a lot of smaller
Let's
businesses.
let's talk about that. So you've got a lot of things in there. So, one of the things that a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs grapple with is when is it time to leave, right? A lot of people like the security of that part-time or full-time day job, but they're spending most of their time instead of the 9 to 5 dreaming about their 5 to 9, right? And trying to put their energy into that. Do you have any suggestions for folks as to when might be the right time or what criteria they need to think about before they make the leap?
I'm very conservative. And so I stuck around a long time. I squirreled away what I felt was like 6 months of living expenses. And the business was all of a sudden earning a double in profit a month than my living expenses. Not as much as my job, but this is what I needed to live on, and it was earning double that. And so I think other people are more, maybe more seat of the pants, and I'm just going to get out there and grind. But for me, I'm just very, very cautious. So that's what made me feel comfortable. And fortunately, I worried about down periods, so that's why I felt like I needed double. And I was fortunate that I didn't really experience any downtimes. It just continued to grow. And the same mentality for hiring my first person. It's like now I'm responsible for someone if we had a bad month. I don't want to have to lay them off. So again, I made sure we had ample money in the reserves and that the business was certainly able to cover all of the expenses, including an employee.
Okay, that's great. I think again, everybody's going to do it differently. People have different pressures, different drivers, different tolerance for risk. And that's okay, but I do like to ask folks like yourself when and why they felt comfortable enough, right, to make the leap. Let's go back to again a few things that you said because you said a lot in your opening introduction. You talked about PR Newswire, of course, the oldest, most established newswire in the world. And there are variations, right? There's the AP, the Associated Press, and there's a lot of smaller tier companies.
So
Because we don't,
In the U.S., there's a
go ahead.
duopoly of news wires of press releases. It's Business Wire and PR Newswire. There was a third player, Globe Newswire, but I don't really consider them anymore because they've sort of pivoted, saying, you know, what happened was journalists would go to the three news wires, Globe being sort of starting out. And all of a sudden, over the years, journalists are expected to do more with less. And so they just sort of, stopped looking on Globe. And so any market share got kind of started to go away. And they pivoted and said, hey, let's become the newswire of record, I think, for NASDAQ. And they work with a lot of publicly traded clients whose focus is getting the press release to meet SEC disclosure, show up like on the places where you look for stocks like Yahoo Finance and things like that. And they're less concerned about a journalist. You can even make the argument that some of these places don't want journalists looking too carefully at their numbers. And so for that reason, it's sort of gone back to the duopoly of Business Wire and PR Newswire. There are other wires out there. You'd mentioned AP, there's Reuters, there's uh,
PR.com. There's a lot of
Dow Jones
multi-tier.
and some of these others.
Sure.
They are not newswires of press releases. For example, they'll never run a press release over their service. They can't legally. They work by licensing their content directly to newspapers and other places that take it. So they write everything that they have. They'll use press releases, but they'll modify it and they'll rewrite it so that it's written original content from them. And so that's the real big difference. And there are other players out there with Newswire in their name that do distribute press releases, but the thing that's missing is journalists. They don't have a relationship for journalists. 95% of journalists search Business Wire or PR Newswire. Often they do both because they kind of have to, because all the big companies are sort of evenly split as to which wire they use. And so no journalist is going to say, I only look on PR Newswire. They would not have a job because there would be blind spots throughout their industry. But for that reason, the newswires are expensive because they're a duopoly. And these other players focus mostly on syndication. And so when you send out a release, even with PR Newswire, it does show up on Yahoo Finance. It does show up on a lot of different websites. Even though you're not publicly traded, there's no stock ticker, they just put all the press releases there. And so there are players in the market who that's the only thing they do. They just put them on a bunch of websites. And these are generally sections on the website, don't get a lot of traffic. There's not a lot of eyeballs looking at it. Nobody's made a decision to put you there. It's just automated. And it really isn't very meaningful. It's not earned media. You're not going to get customers from it. You're probably not going to get more than, a dozen visitors from it. And so it really has become a bit of a distraction, especially with many of them having Newswire in their name or Wire in their names and things like that. But basically, if you're looking to reach journalists and the goal is to get earned media and have them write about you, it really is you want to be on a wire like Business Wire or PR Newswire. And outside of that, there are PR firms that, occasionally use wires, but they also do pitching themselves. Used to be a combination of phone and email. And I think, unfortunately, it's kind of gearing back towards solely phone because email has been destroyed for reaching journalists for the most part. What ruined what was my original business, emailing press releases to journalists, is media databases. They've come on the market a lot over the last couple of decades. And so you have a golf club company that just paid $10,000 to license a media database for a year. And they downloaded or sent to the 1,300 people who cover the golf industry their press release. And then they start creative thinking and saying, who likes golf to play golf? Bankers and finance people. So all of a sudden they're sending their press releases to finance analysts and reporters who cover banking and business news. They'll never in a million years write about golf clubs, but all of a sudden now their inbox is filled with that. And that same scenario is happening throughout every industry with everybody sending off-target press releases. And so a lot of journalists are calling, even when they email a journalist a pitch and say, hey, I'm just calling because you probably can't find it in your inbox, but I sent you a pitch. And they're like, oh, help me find it. What should I search for? What's your domain name? And it's so email is a really terrible way to reach journalists today, unfortunately. And it's the biggest complaint for a lot of journalists. So when they go to the Newswire and have their login credentials, they see a customized feed, which is their industry. They also can customize it with exclusions and inclusions to make sure that, if they cover the fashion world, but not high fashion, they might set keywords in there to exclude, like I'm never going to write about, these companies or, certain words that are used or vice versa. And so it's the exact opposite of their email inbox. It's very specialized, and that's why journalists find so much value in PR Newswire and Business Wire today. And so does make it very difficult for journalists as well as for even people like PR firms who are trying to reach those journalists.
Again, tons of knowledge here. When you're putting out 10,000 press releases a year, right? You've learned a few things. So I want to still come back to this because those are the two, right, big kahunas in the world with respect to, at least within the United States,
Correct.
with respect to the news wires. When a small company is looking at that and they think, God, 1,700, 1,800, that is so far out of reach. What does the small company do? Now, I know you said you've got affordable options with eReleases, which is really exciting to hear, but I always try to keep it limited on sort of the infomercial side of things. We try to provide value just like you do upfront. Mickie and I, we had, the pre-call right before we get on the podcast. And Mickey's whole goal and intention here is what it always has been, is to educate people on how to get the most out of their press release, right? He's a
Yeah.
ninja. He slays press releases. This is what he does. So if a little guy, a small company, can't afford to do the two big wires, are we potentially wasting our money going on the smaller ones that are doing that syndication approach and just automatically pushing it out? Should we
Yeah,
save
it's
for
it's
the big one? Like, what do
absolutely
we
a
do?
waste. It's absolutely a waste of money to go to a syndication site. That some of them I see as little as $59, $200, but usually in between those two prices. It doesn't really give you any benefit. I don't. You're not ever going to get an article written about you as a result of it. I would rather that you just start grassroots locally yourself. And when it comes to local media, you're the easiest person to get it, and it's not daunting at all. If you break it down, there's less than 10 people in your local market who could write about you. And reach out to your local newspaper, do your research, who covers your industry there. Get their email address. They are not celebrities, they're members of the community. You should be able to call or look online, and if you can't find it, reach out and request it, and let them know why you're requesting it. I'm a local business. I have a pitch that I'd like to send to them, and again, you're going to probably want to follow up by phone. Just to make sure they got it, and to remind them maybe a clue to a distinct keyword or your company name that they could do a search in their inbox. I will say that local media, their inbox is looking a little uncomfortable, but it's not as bad as like these national journalists and
Sure.
reporters. But it would be useful to make that phone call, even if it's just to leave a voicemail and to just say, "Hey, local business here. I just pitched you. I think it's a really great idea." You could either quickly say what the pitch is, or just give them a clue as to how to find you in the inbox and your phone number if they want to give you a call back. And
Perfect.
yeah, it's as easy as that. If you have a local business magazine or newspaper, I think we're lucky in Baltimore that we kind of have two of those. There's also a consumer magazine, a high-end one, Baltimore Magazine, that might be appropriate if you're in the consumer market. You're going to look at even weekly papers or magazines. Sometimes there's ones for parenting. Sometimes there's ones for sports and outdoors. There's free community papers that sometimes I have a hack with that. But if you're
Oh, you said hack. You said the magic word, Mickey. I'm going to cut you off. What's the hack? You can't keep going on like that and not share
Okay,
the
so
hack.
community papers, the neighborhood papers, they're focused solely on advertising. And then they go and they're laying out the ads, and it's like, oh, we don't have any content here. So if you approach them, and this works really well if you're a dentist or a chiropractor, or you run a spa, or you actually have a local business, you could do an occasional column. And you just write something that is useful as a resource to people in the community, that also is discussing something related to you, and then get insists that you have a little bio at the bottom that talks about you and the fact you're a local business. And this works for people who are wedding planners, or just all different types of things like that. Florists providing gardening advice, and also pitching that they're a local florist. And so next time someone thinks of just calling 1-800-Flowers, they're like, I've got a local company here that, gives me this great gardening advice. So, those are the things to do. The community paper is going to try to lock you into, let's do a column every week. You can put
Hmm.
your foot down and say, I'd like to do it quarterly, or if you're, feeling like you could do it monthly. But they love content, and so they're some of the easiest to work with, where they're not writing it, but they'll allow you to write a simple column and get in there. And also consider TV and radio. Is there certain segments on the local news, like once a year they start bringing some chiropractors in, or masseuses, and give massage and focus on things like that. Or if there's something that they've done that's similar to that, and you could make it applicable to you, you would just call and just say, "Hey, I've seen this segment. Who's the producer or booker of that segment?" And they'll give you the name, get their information, and just pitch them. Just say, "Hey, I saw that you had done this, and I think that my business would be good." And maybe you could tie it to a month that is like your industry month, or if it's something that sort of ties seasonally or something like that, that say this would look really good on TV. And that's the way they're going to look at it. It's like, we're a
Right.
visual thing. What can you bring to the table that would look interesting for viewers? And radio, it's like, what's going to sound good? What's going to entice people? And if there's programs that sometimes spotlight businesses or provide resources, like a call-in show. Again, find out who the producer or booker of that show is, and now you have your Rolodex of like less than 10 people. And just as you have ideas, reach out to them and pitch them. And I try to suggest to do this at least quarterly. And it may seem like the first year nothing happens, but I tell you that I hear from people who do this time and time again that I've been doing this a year, not much results. Sometimes it just seems like I'm just pitching and leaving voicemails. But all of a sudden, I got a call, and this journalist at the paper said, "Hey, I know you pitched me a few times. It's never really worked out, but I'm working on the story, and I'm looking to plug in a local business, and I thought of you. What do you have a quote or something you could talk around this?" And when someone says something like that, a quote is so important. Don't just ad lib. Just say, "Hey, could I take like 5 minutes and put something together and send it over to you?" And maybe we could pick up the phone and talk again, and really put some thought and energy into your quote. Make sure it's active verbs. You're saying something as tight and strong and condensed as possible. Make sure you're really delivering some value, because I always tell people, you could tell if you have a good quote by, if the journalist was to paraphrase what you said and took your quote out, would you ache when you read the article and say, "Oh, I really missed what I said. I said it perfectly, and this is just safe." And so that's what you want. And again, that's the kind of thing that you can do. You can replicate that to specific trade publications. And so if you don't have the budget to even, pay for something like eReleases, you can sort of do this yourself and build those sort of connections one by one. Because once you build these connections, you can continue to use them and develop them over time. I know one company in Baltimore that gets quoted 3 or 4 times a year in the Baltimore Sun, and I met them at an event for EO Entrepreneurs Organization, the Baltimore chapter. And I said, "Do you spend a lot of money with the Baltimore Sun?" And he laughed. He said, "I've never placed an ad in the Baltimore Sun." He goes,
Wow, that's
"But
incredible.
he said the first time they called me, I stopped everything and brought in my HR person, because it was an HR culture thing that they were wanting to get some quotes on. And we put together a quote, and within an hour, we had delivered them an amazing quote, and even had some photo ideas for them. And they brought a photographer in. And ever since then, they know if we need someone quick with a quote or to talk about something, these people are perfect. They drop everything and they really go to bat with an amazing quote, maybe sometimes even brainstorming images that we could use in the office that might look great. And so they've become a real asset, and they're rewarded by that, by being quoted a few times each year.
That's a tremendous reward. And again, there's a few key things in there. When you have an opportunity like that, you need to drop it and whatever you're doing and flex, because the opportunity is bigger probably than the thing you're working on. I had that experience this morning. There's a new company, a startup founder who has a government contract opportunity and is begging for help. And so I've offered to help. Well, no, that time doesn't work. Maybe I could give you 10, 15 minutes, or maybe later today, maybe there's another 15 minutes, or yeah, I know it's due Tuesday. Like, what else can you do? Can you adjust your schedule? Like, wait a minute, I'm offering free expert help that you've begged for. You got to adjust, you got to keep it in line. Okay, a
Right.
couple of things. The way that you've described here, this is really good business to consumer, B2C, right? If you're a chiropractor, a dentist, a whatnot, a florist, you
Yeah.
have people off the street and whatnot coming into your practice, your store, your offer. What if you are, as many of my audience members are, a B2B? right? You're a small business offering services to another business, or you're an author looking to get your book out, which is a case of a lot. What do you do? Are press
So
releases
I
for
find
you? Do
that
you still take the local media? What do you do?
I still take advantage of local media I can with B2B. If you can create a interesting story, your local paper sometimes will do B2B. Your business journals and business magazines love B2B. And even if you're a national market, it doesn't hurt to really make your presence known in your local market. Also, B2B, what are your three dream business trade publications or websites, because sometimes they're not print anymore, and pitch them and start there. And I think that B2B has the same opportunities as anybody else. You just want to make sure that you're really creating a great story. And I tell people, they don't understand what I mean by story. And I take like the most common press release that I get at eReleases um, is the product launch. And it could be a service launch, but it's a launch. And people tend to do, here's our new product, here's a list of features, here's a page to learn more about. And I tell them, I was like, there's not a lot of story there. And they're like, well, what can I do? It's a product. And I'm like, did you beta test it? Did you just roll this out to the market with nothing? And they're like, oh no, we had several people use it. This company had this experience. This company, they were so excited. They said this. And I'm like, that needs to be in the press release. Put some use case material in there. Here was a company that was losing 7% a year. They plug in your logistics software solution to produce invoices, and all of a sudden they're projected to have a 5% profit in this year. And you could take a publicly available data point like 67% of new transportation companies fail in the first 5 years because they don't achieve profitability. So that sort of underscores the importance of this. And here is a company that would have been one of those casualties, and now it's on the good path. And now get a quote by them talking about what their experience was, something that just just wows. Like this, we thought that this was going to be so difficult to implement, but it's actually made things so much easier. And we can really put our foot down when people push back on price and say, we will lose money anything less than this. If that doesn't work, we're not the right fit for you. And all of a sudden that you close those sales where people really push hard for a discount that'll probably take you out of profitability. And so these are the things that these are stories, because these are the things that businesses are involved with, these challenges around pricing and things like that. So that is a story. And a journalist is like, oh, here's a new product and here is a company's experience. And I know that my audience will really appreciate this story and go along for the ride of, the challenges of a new business, the failure rate, this company's track record, which wasn't good, and the turnaround. People love turnarounds. And
Yes.
so that's really good. And people often have this stuff already, because when I push back with a product launch, I rarely have had someone say, "Oh no, we've never had anyone try this. We're just hoping it does well." No, they're like, "No, we've had lots of people beta test it. We've gotten a lot of positive reactions. That's why we're so excited about it." The people that used it have been like the biggest cheerleaders, and I said, "You got to put your cheerleaders in the press release and really communicate that to the journalist, get them excited, and share those experiences so that they can then write a story and follow a story arc."
Perfect, because I have worked myself for a lot of software companies, and there's always a release. This is a new product, these are the features, functions, blah, 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 right? It's going to help you boil the ocean. It's going to help you change the world. It's right, all that sort
The
of good stuff.
Apples of the world and the Microsoft of the world can get away with that because they're going to cover them regardless. But anybody else, you've really got to like amp it up and deliver a story.
Right, but stay on point, right? Don't You can't lie, can't put any of that. So, I mean, I don't think
Correct,
anybody in our
correct.
audience listening has no integrity, but we're just putting it out there. Now, what about business books, Mickie? Because a lot of folks I know, small business owners, we've, and speaking for like the collective, we've been, I think, sold a bill of goods, right? You need to have your regular webinar. You need to have your article and blog on Substack. You need to have your Instagram. You need to have your Facebook. You need to have your TikTok. You need to have your YouTube channel. You need to have regular posts to your LinkedIn. You need to like, right? It's exhausting. And oh, by the way, business cards aren't enough anymore. You need to have your book on Amazon and you need to, you know, I don't know, jerk the algorithm so that in the first 5 hours you're listed as a bestseller on Amazon, right? Because everybody's a bestseller
Right.
on Amazon. Do
Right.
book new business books make sense to announce on a press release?
They do, if you understand the expectation, it may not translate into sales. And what I mean is, if you put $1,000 into PR about your book, it probably won't sell enough books to cover profitably the $1,000 you spent. But I think when it comes to business books, they allow you to be put into a leadership position. They could really boost your authority. So if you do PR and you get two articles about you, say one in a trade magazine, say one in the local newspaper, that looks so good on your website. That looks so good going out to your social media. That looks so good going out in your customer newsletters that it really is going to enhance your credibility in a way that just having three or four reviews on Amazon, you may not. And so I think it's worth it because I think that it reflects and shows this evidence, almost like an implied endorsement that you're the real deal and this is a real book and it's been received by the world as a real book because your industry has covered it, your local newspaper has covered it, and things along those lines. So I do think that now it's just you never know. I know one guy who spent $40,000 hiring a PR firm, and
Wow.
he got picked up in the Harvard Business Review, and he got picked up in another business magazine. And you know, I said, did it move any books? He goes, no. He goes, I put uh, my a link to the Harvard Business Review. I think it was photos or scans he had of the book of his article, and he says just the beginning of it because I don't, they charge for their content. He goes, but it's just such credibility, and people are like, oh my God, you know. He says more people have said, "Oh, you've been in Harvard Business Review, and this other a place I forget what I think it was like Fortune, which doesn't carry the cachet that it used to because Forbes and Fortune are now selling almost blog posts
Yeah.
on their site. They're not in the print, but this is the print article that he got in. And so to him, he's like, that's, people are like, oh, you wrote a book. And he goes, and it's like, it's Harper Collins. It wasn't, it was a real publisher. And he goes, there are people who are just like, a lot of people write books, but it's like, oh, you've been picked up in these two big places in addition to the book. He goes, it just amplifies it. And he says, I get the request for being a speaker as a result of that, PR and everything. It's just really moved the business. He goes, I think that it's really helped me close sales. The book plus that amplification of it. And, I personally couldn't take 40,000 from somebody and only get two articles
No,
like that,
that
but
that seems a
uh,
bit bougie and gougy
it does.
on both sides.
And as I pointed out, wasn't the Harvard Business Review article written by you? Because I don't know that they have third-party journalists who write. He goes, "You're right." He goes, "But they helped me put together a pitch of an article that I ended up writing." And it's like, well, you got picked up by
Mhm.
HarperCollins. I think you probably could have done that one on your own. You're a pretty competent person. But anyhow, it does sort of echo that for him, spending 40 grand was worth it just because those two signals on top of the
Right.
book really just amplified him and put him in such a high thought leadership position. I would never recommend spending that kind of money. But I do think that, pitching a book with a few press releases, which You can do as little as $349, new customer special with us. It allows you to do 3 releases. You can really get some great opportunities and get some great articles out there. Just make sure what you're writing about is strategic and that you're telling a story. And there are types of press releases that the media responds to, and some that they don't do very well.
Mickie, what a wealth of information. You have aptly earned the PR Ninja title. But as we're coming to the end here of our podcast, I'd like to ask just a couple of questions. One, a lot of folks are going to accelerators, MBA programs, business programs, and they are either aspiring entrepreneurs or looking to enrich their knowledge so that can become better entrepreneurs. What do you think's missing from business schools that they should be teaching and that entrepreneurs should be like, oh yeah, God, I should learn that. That's a gap.
So I joined a marketing mastermind a long time ago because I didn't come from a business background. Best thing I ever did. And it's the little stuff. It's like, uh, you know, how do you know if your ads are doing well in Google? When should I, how should that work? And so I learned about A/B split testing and statistical relevance. And I learned about all the little cool tools and techniques and things that people are doing today that are working that are probably not going to be there in 2 or 3 years. So schools aren't going to teach about that, but these are the meaningful things that you can do in your business. And I took the A/B split testing and applied it to business processes, and took 2 populations of onboarding with my customers for 6 months, and then measured their lifetime value over time, and found that one way of onboarding quadrupled the lifetime value after three
Wow.
years.
Huge
And so,
difference.
yeah, and so I'm excited by measuring. So measure as much as you can in your business, and find what it is that you need that helps you with your business. And for some people, it's these educational opportunities. Some people, it's finding your tribe or mastermind or whatever it is. But just seek out community. It's lonely being an entrepreneur. I've since joined EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, the Baltimore chapter, and I don't get a lot of business skills from it. The marketing mastermind does that, but the social thing, it's like we're not isolated and alone, and we're struggling to let someone go that is a friend, and it's like, how do you navigate that? And these people have been there, they've done it. And so just being able to lean on real world situations and what's happening now, I find that invaluable.
Oh, yeah. I've recently joined our chambers. We've got multiple chambers. I'm in New Jersey, and I've just gotten so much value out of it. Just that connection, right? For me, it's all about find your tribe, find your vibe, right? Who are
Right.
you vibing with? Who works? And it hasn't translated like, hey, Laurelyn, we're going to buy this and this. Right? No, no, no. But I'm getting value out of it, which is all, ultimately the equation in anything that you invest in. Now,
Sure.
how can folks find you, Mickie, and eReleases? How can they find you?
So my website's eReleases.com. All of our social media is in the lower right, including my direct LinkedIn. I do have a free mastermind that goes through the types of press releases you should be doing. Um, it's available at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN. There's a link to it in the footer, maybe kind of hard to find. There's also a link in the footer to the new customer special, which gets our newsmaker for $349. And if you have any questions, you're new to PR, start with the free masterclass, and feel free to chat or email or call the office. We have no salespeople; it's just editors. There's no commissions or anything like that, and everybody's entitled to be honest. And if we just feel it's not a good fit, and there are particular industries where it's very difficult for PR to work, especially if you're like in the anything involving health claims and stuff like that, and the newswire doesn't like those types of releases as well. But outside of that, just try to get a little bit of education. I tell people, when it comes to writing the press release, there's a lot of templates on our website, and a lot of value there. You can lean on AI to write your press release, but never lean on AI to choose what the press release is going to be about. AI has been trained on the 97% of press releases that don't generate earned media, the 97% of press releases that are just noise. And so, take that masterclass, focus on the 3% of press releases that do get picked up. There's patterns there, there's types of approaches, and they apply to almost anyone. And I think that if you build a PR campaign of 6 to 8 releases, whether you take a year or year and a half to do those 6 to 8 releases, and you're doing strategic, meaningful releases, you're going to have 2 or 3 of them that really do well. The rest of them may not. And the truth is, I have people who've had one press release do well, and it just changed their whole trajectory. Their entire business changed as a result of it. And that's the possibility that can happen when you're on a newswire where journalists are reviewing and looking for stories.
Oh, excellent. That's exciting. I mean, this is why I love doing the podcast. I always learn something. I've written press releases, I've done them, but I know I can learn something from your mastermind class. So I'm going to be taking a look at that. Mickie, last question. It is our signature question of our podcast. I've been asking, a lot of guests, 250 some guests over the years. If we peeked into your closet and we looked at your shoes, your boots, your footwear, there's always one pair that our founders and business owners gravitate to and say, that is me. It's my personality and why it is who I am. What are we looking at?
Probably a rainbow pride edition of Converse sneakers.
Excellent. We'll have to air this one on during Pride Month. I'll have to just move some things around, but I'm game for that. Oh, that's fun. I've actually seen those. I've got some wonderful Pride platforms. They're kind of fun, nice like wedge, so you can walk pretty far down New York City in the parade without worrying too much about breaking an ankle. All right, so folks, that is a wrap. We've had wonderful insights and tips from Mickie Kennedy, founder of eReleases.com, who has just given us a wealth of information about all the bits we need to know about PR. And the bottom line is, you're not too small as a business to get a press release. You just have to do it right. Mickie, thanks so much for being on our show.
Well, thanks for having me.
And how about that fantastic intro by Touch Circle?